Inside Racing is brought to you by Dunlop.
Bold designs, dramatic races. Lotus, for many fans and collectors, the epitome of the British racing spirit. Lotus simply touches the emotions.
This is like selfish interest for me, because this is all I want to do, is to be with the old cars.
These are racing cars. They're not meant to go into a bank like a famous painting. They're meant to be raced.
The unbridled fascination with former heroes and their Lotus cars remains inspiring to this day. We meet two men who give full rein to their passion. Clive leads the classic team, looking after the legacy of his father, Colin Chapman, the ingenious, radical founder of Lotus. John Chisholm, Scottish businessman and amateur racer, lives his dream driving the Climax 18.
It's meant to be raced, it's meant to be driven fast, it's meant to have problems. This car breaks its components quite often because it was designed by Colin Chapman, and Colin Chapman never believed in making anything so robust that it lasted beyond the checkered flag. And quite often it didn't make the checkered flag.
The legend knew no compromise. Winning was everything.
The fuel for the car, which is methanol, is all along the side of the cockpit. So basically the driver is sitting inside the fuel tank, and this is how Formula One was in those days. Not very safe, but in those days the safety for the driver and by the designers was not the main consideration. It was winning the race.
The success story begins in 1960. Mastermind Colin Chapman achieves his first major coup in Monaco. Behind the wheel, Stirling Moss has the streets of the Principality rocking, winning the classic race twice in a row.
One of the highlights, certainly, because I had this race 100 laps around Monaco, and never was there a bigger gap than 3 or 4 seconds between myself and the Ferraris, which I had to beat.
Together with Dunlop as tyre supplier, their triumphal march was unstoppable. Formula One world champions in 1963 and 65 with Jim Clark. Lotus continually setting new standards.
This Lotus 49 from 1967 is one of the most important Formula One cars of all time for 2 reasons. First, because it's the first car to use the Cosworth DFV engine, the V8 that went on to win hundreds of Grand Prix in all sorts of different cars. But secondly, and more importantly, it's the first of the modern Formula One cars. The chassis stops at this point, and from here on in, the engine is actually part of the chassis. Saves loads of weight and makes it much more agile. Before that, all cars were built like this, with an engine sitting inside the chassis, which is more weight, and so it's slower.
7 constructors and 6 drivers' titles in Formula One. Every year at the Festival of Speed, the Lotus family and the fan community celebrate the good old times. The wedge-shaped Lotus 72 given a run out here, as is the Indy 500 winning car of 1965.
Well, to work with the original mechanics is very special for me. Bob Dance, who's with the team since the 60s, and Chris Dinage and Nick Yallop, who were here with the team in the 70s and 80s. To be able to work with those guys on the original cars is a real privilege for me.
A question of honour too, authentic condition and a really solid driving sensation, even at a show event such as Goodwood, with just a mile of retro feeling.
There's a manufacturer of Dunlop tyres today, the replica of the original tyres. And this car, tyres are a problem because this car was built for 3-hour Grand Prix. Okay, so it's got these big wheels, 15-inch wheels with big tyres on them, which would last 3 hours. In something like this, of course, they never get hot. And so handling is a problem.
Nevertheless, just standing around and being admired doesn't do the legend justice. But living the Lotus legend, there's nothing like it.
Inside Racing was brought to you by Dunlop.